Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and I'm so delighted you've joined me for a story tonight. So before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, have you ever watched a male praying mantis copulate with a female? And as this passionate interaction takes place, the male praying mantis gets eaten alive by the female as they engage in this treacherous union that always ends with deadly consequences. For some reason, the male praying mantis thinks losing himself to certain death is worth his while, just to have this one moment of intimacy with the ruthless female who has no mercy, so that they can reproduce together. This is the male praying mantis's quintessential opportunity to mate with a female praying mantis, and it ends with a devastating finality. It rarely is brutal, but who ever said that life was fair? I hasten to say that this is exactly what happened to me with Alexia Muldooney, who was not unsimilar in her dealings with me as the female praying mantis. Indeed, I would go so far as to say the comparison is rather appropriate. However, I never got the opportunity of being intimate with her. She made sure that never happened. You see, Alexia Muldooney will throw you a carrot. Then she will take it away from you, or tease a dog with some juicy fillet steak, and then eat it all up herself. What I say to man-eaters like Alexia Muldooney is that not all men will allow themselves to be eaten alive by their female lover. Some of us just ain't going to sit back and take it. And I know for one thing, I certainly won't. You picked the wrong man here to have your fun with, Alexa, I'm afraid. You better watch out, love. You ain't got a clue what's coming your way. And I hate to say this, but it ain't going to do that pretty face of yours any favours. It's funny how accidents can so easily happen when you least expect them to. You may have spat me out after you'd finished with me, but it ain't over until the fat lady sings. Just one word of advice to you, Alexa Muldooney. Be very careful who you're dealing with. If you swim with the sharks, you're very much going to get bitten. So, word of advice for you, love. Watch yourself. It's not going to be very pleasant for you to dive into the water with your eyes wide open. For you might be very sorry, my girl. There are lots of nasty surprises lurking beneath the dark, treacherous water that might unexpectedly pounce on you unawares. And one of them might very well be me. And if you think sharks are dangerous, love, well, you ain't seen anything yet. Ostensibly, you were quite the fool to lead me up the garden path in the dispassionate way that you did, making me falsely believe that there was hope and a bright future for the both of us. You were nothing more than a tease. I guess you were excited about writing to a criminal like myself who was in prison for violent crime. Why do so many women get off on that? I've never understood it myself. It's like they like bad boys, don't they? It titillates and teases their darkest fantasies. You believed I was incarcerated for life, didn't you, Alexa? It made you feel safe to write to me, didn't it? You believed I was never going to get out, so you could toy with my emotions unabashedly, make me believe you loved me. You got some kind of a cheap kick from writing to a bad guy in prison like myself for over 4 long years. I could sense your excitement when I told you about the crimes I committed. You wanted all the details, didn't you? I had to exaggerate some of them to give you an even greater rush. I knew hearing of such things that I professed to have done was for you like getting high on magic mushrooms. The truth was my crimes were pretty unexciting and rather mundane, but the less said about that the better. I don't want to harp back on the past, do I? One thing about you is you underestimated me, Alexa, I'm afraid. That's a problem with women like yourself. All those shameless love letters you wrote me, that you declared your undying love to me in. What was it you wrote, Alexa, exactly? Let's see. I've got the letter here. Let me just open it up for a second. Yes, here your words are. I'm going to make you very accountable for them, I'm afraid. Words are dangerous, you know. They can be like flying shrapnel, because they can cause deadly harm. I love you so very much. I just so wish we could be together forever and ever. My heart is all yours. Don't ever forget that for a second. Don't you worry, Alexa Muldooney. I haven't forgotten that for a second. And I will hold you to your promise. You told me you belonged to me, didn't you? One thing you failed to realize about me, Alexa, that I was not sentenced to life imprisonment, and that was the good news I chose not to share with you freely. Yes, I had been in prison for violent crime, but I never actually killed anyone in that incident, so the court thankfully had mercy on me. And of course I got out earlier for good behaviour. I was described as a transformed prisoner who had found God. The last part, of course, was never true, but one can be creative with the truth, can't one? And it never did me any harm to make them believe that. What you never fully anticipated or appreciated, Alexa, was that one day I was going to come out of prison. And as you had said, we would live together happily ever after, like they do in the fairy tales. But it turned out that our love story was just a farce, wasn't it? It was a story without substance, depth, or any staying power. It was flaky and insincere, just like you, Alexa Muldooney. You led me astray, didn't you, with your false promises? You thought you could play with fire and not get burnt, didn't you? You thought you could put your finger through the tiger enclosure without getting bitten. You thought that the untamed tiger would never get out of his enclosure. But little did you know he would. And when he did, he would seek you out and make you fully accountable for all the lies you told him, all the coquettish, flirtatious, and insincere promises you so easily made to me that you knew never needed to be fulfilled. Because as far as you were concerned, I was safely locked behind prison bars for life, so you could tease me without experiencing the consequences of your silly little juvenile games. You were the temptress seducing me, were you not? Isn't it funny how when I told you I was being released from prison, that I couldn't wait for us to start living our lives together, what did you do? You poured ice-cold water onto our budding romance and on the love you professed to feel for me. The moment you learnt I was being released from prison, you began to panic quite significantly about all the lies you had fed me over the years, all the hopes you had indiscriminately thrown my way like meaty bones to a starving dog. All I have been to you all along was some kind of warped, dark fantasy that you could play with, like a cat toying with a mouse. Once you learnt I was coming out of prison, how your letters changed, did they not? You became aloof, insouciant, very distant. Your letters sounded as if you were writing to the local authority about a problem with a pedestrian crossing. What did those mean-spirited letters say to me? Oh, yes, that you'd never loved me, that our relationship could never work, that it was only a bit of fun. Only a bit of fun.
Are you kidding me, Alexa? Is that how you view it? All I was to you was only a bit of fun, after you'd sworn your undying love to me. How can you give a man hope and tear it away from him so frivolously, like a page in a book that means absolutely nothing? Some men might take that kind of abysmal treatment lying down, but not me. Every day when I got up in the morning in my pitiful little cell, you, Alexa, were the one thing that gave me a reason to face another day. You led me to believe that one day if I got out, we would be together. And then you do this to me. You spat me out with your dirty bathwater, as if I was nothing. Did you really think I would take this all lying down? Are you kidding me? Is this some kind of a joke? I'm not a pussycat, Alexa. I'm an untamed, dangerous, wild animal, and no one takes a bite out of me and gets away with it. Sorry, Alexa, but this pussycat you've been playing with has lethal claws and sharp teeth that can tear you apart limb from limb. So I'm coming for you, girl. I'm coming for you. You wrongly assumed that just by moving away from your old residential address in downtown Atlanta, that I wouldn't be able to trace you, that I wouldn't know where you lived. You thought I wouldn't be able to track you down, didn't you? More fool you. You are ignorant as well as callow, Alexa, but that suits me just fine. It wouldn't be very great for me if you were as sharp as a double-edged sword, but you aren't. You, Alexa, are about as blunt and as naive as they come, although you do rather fancy yourself as a woman of the world. But you underestimated me, Alexa Muldooney. You assumed you were clever, didn't you? Hurriedly deleting all your Facebook profiles, retracting your footprint from all social media. You were very fearful that I would come after you, weren't you, Alexa? Fearful that I would find you. You were right about that. You do need to be afraid, very afraid, because, Alexa, I'm waiting and I'm watching you. I'm biding my time. I'm not hungry enough to strike at you yet, but I'm getting there very quickly. And when I'm ravenous enough, that is when I will drag you down like a hefty crocodile into the water, and you will not see me coming. I know all about you, Alexa. I've been following you around, studying you like a school project. There is nothing about you I don't know now. You're like an open book to me. Have you not felt eyes burning into your back when you're shopping at the grocery store or crossing the road? Have you felt as if you've been watched all the time? If you haven't sensed you've been followed, then you're not very observant, my girl. It was all very convenient for me. Everything fitted perfectly into place. The apartment next to yours went up for rent, and I persuaded my sister Jane to rent the place, so that I could have a lookout point, so that I could watch your comings and goings, and keep close tabs on you, Alexa. My sister Jane was looking for a nice place, so I nudged her in the right direction, and bingo, she took the apartment. Isn't it amazing how life can fit so perfectly together, so seamlessly, when you least expect it to do so? You made this so terribly easy for me, Alexa. Very easy indeed. I'm privy to all your sacred daily routines, sunbathing in the late afternoon on your patio, about 9 stories above the ground. It's quite a steep drop, don't you think, Alexa? When you told me you were a gymnast once, I didn't believe you. I thought you were exaggerating ever so slightly. But I take it all back. When I saw you doing a handstand on your balcony railing early in the morning, a ritual you seem to do before you go to work, along with a few yoga stretches on that mat of yours. Well, I thought I was seeing double, didn't I? But there you were, Alexa, larger than life, doing a handstand on the patio railings without any fear of the steep drop below you. You've got to be kidding me. Who does that? But then I remembered that they broke the mold when they made you, as nobody normal would exercise on the end of a sheer cliff face. No one but you, Alexa Muldooney. My first thought was, is this woman completely crazy? When I saw you doing these idiosyncratic practices, I could not believe my good fortune. You're making this very easy for me, Alexa, easier than I ever anticipated. Has it not occurred to you that it would take just one little gentle push from that railing when you're doing a handstand, that you would fall to your death without any problems at all? I wonder, would anybody be surprised by that? I don't think so. Many of the residents have seen you doing a handstand on your railings. Many have advised you not to do this practice. But one thing I've noticed about you, Alexa, if someone tells you not to do something, you become quite bloody-minded, don't you? Incredibly contrary. You never listen to well-meaning advice, because you always know better. You're quite arrogant like that, I think. It's like you get off putting yourself at great risk, like those people that get a thrill out of bungee jumping. But lucky for them, they have a safety harness, don't they? It ensures they don't fall to their certain deaths. But you, Alexa, on the other hand, don't have any protection. And you know what, Alexa? I think I'm beginning to understand the workings of your mind a lot more, Alexa. There's a part of you that loves to live dangerously. That's why you started writing to me in prison. It's all about putting yourself at risk. It gives you some kind of an endorphin rush, does it not? Why, even my own sister, living in the flat next door to yours, warned you against such outlandish behaviour. I don't think you should do handstands on those railings, she told you. What if you slipped and fell? You'd never survive a drop like that. But you practically laughed in her face, did you not? She told me as much, you know. You seem to think you're invincible, don't you, Alexa? But I'm here to tell you that you're definitely not. Do you know your cockiness is admirable? I'll give you that. One thing I will say about you unequivocally is that you do have a very high regard for yourself. You said to my sister with a seriousness of note, which suggested you believed your own lies. Not me. I'm nimble. I was a gymnast when I was at school. I've been keeping up these exercises ever since, and I've never ever fallen once. But Alexa, there's always a first time, is there not? Well, I've got news for you, Alexa. You're not invincible. No one is, I'm afraid. You're made out of flesh like the rest of us, and you'll find out about that soon enough. I hate to say this to you, but your body ain't going to look terribly pretty once you fall from those railings onto the concrete floor of the courtyard below. When I think of all the effort you've put in to look so good, all the calorie counting you've done over the years, the rigorous workouts, the surgical procedures, the Botox and fillers, and all that sunbathing. You've invested so much in your appearance. And all for what, Alexa? It breaks my heart to think what you will look like once the funeral director places you into that wooden box. Even he won't be able to look at you without growing green at the gills and having to clandestinely rush to the Johnny to vomit up the contents of his stomach. Poor, poor man. My heart bleeds for him. They'll have to keep the box shut permanently to spare your vanity. You wouldn't want to be seen dead looking like that. You get the joke, Alexa. You cannot say I don't have a great sense of humour. My sister Jane Goodlington warned you that you could accidentally slip from the railings, as I keep saying. She warned you about the dangers of excessive tanning. My sister was looking out for you, was she not? Why she bothered to warn you about the blindingly obvious, God only knows. You were right about one thing, though, Alexia. I'll give you that. You really won't have to worry about malignant melanoma or any deadly skin cancer, for you will never be afflicted by the disease. How do I know? It's obvious, isn't it? You're going to exit this planet with a dramatic impact no one will see coming, and I can guarantee you that. If you fell from your balcony, no one would even raise an eyebrow. The big question I ask myself is, would anybody miss you? Would anybody shed a tear for you? No, I don't think so. Apart from the skank of a daughter of yours. And I'm sorry, but she really is a skank. It's true. Do they not say that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree? Mind you, your daughter didn't come out of the same cereal packet as you did. Her cereal packet was designed for Halloween. Yours was designed for little girls with a fixation on Barbie and the colour pink. As for that skank of a daughter of yours, she's a scary one to look at. She could be pretty if she abandoned those Halloween costumes she wears every day. Personally, I've never been partial to young women wearing black lipstick and having more than half a dozen earrings in one earlobe. I may have come out of prison, but I still appreciate femininity when I see it in a woman. And all those piercings are overkill, if you ask me, especially on a young lady like your daughter, if you can call her that. You must have really turned your daughter off the idea of being feminine. Poor thing, she didn't stand a chance, did she, with you as a mother, because she didn't want to look like you at all. So she did a complete 180. And who can blame her for that? That poor sorry girl. She didn't want to bear any resemblance to you, did she? You're a pretty veneer, aren't you, Alexa? But when you look too closely, you get to see all the imperfections, all the cracks that lie beneath the sorry surface. I will admit the golden tan does hide a multitude of imperfections, does it not? But going back to your poor daughter, what's her name again? Sophia, that's right. She has my deepest sympathies. I mean, honestly, with a mother like you, is there any hope? Your daughter was doomed from the very start, and her boyfriend Carpenter. Well, let's not get started with him. That teenager looks very shady, if you ask me. I wouldn't be surprised if he shoplifts on the weekends. He's shifty looking, but too shifty to get caught, I suspect. I know his type rather well. I've been in prison long enough to be able to pick his type out from a crowd. The type that gets incarcerated for petty theft or drug dealing that goes badly wrong. You're a terrible mother, Alexa. I'm a sorry witness to this tragic fact. Women like you were never meant to have children. My guess is your poor daughter Sophia is an illegitimate child. You probably don't even know who her father is, as men have come and gone in your life as frequently as the buses on the interstate. If you had been a better mother, I may have had more pity on you. But regretfully, my pity has worn thin. Your girl is only 16 years old, and what a cross she has to bear, being raised by a mother like you, who is only interested in herself. It's a pity you don't devote more attention to Sophia, as you do to yourself. Then the poor girl wouldn't be so lost, and attracting loser boyfriends like Carpenter into her life. Tell me, Alexa, if you were to succumb to an unfortunate accident, would any of the men you've wooed over the years be remotely sad about your loss? I don't think so. You haven't got any men caught up in your web at the moment, It's a sorry-skinned month for you on the boyfriend front, isn't it, Alexa? Alas, there are no rich pickings for you at the moment, so there will be no devastated lovers left behind to pick up the pieces after you're gone. Oh dear, my heart bleeds for you, poor Alexa. The girl who lived fast and died young. You're 41 years old, aren't you? That still makes you reasonably young as far as I'm concerned. Although, if you don't mind my saying so, with all the sunbathing you've been doing, your skin is pretty leathery these days, and there is no amount of Botox or fillers that can fix a complexion like that. I am told close up that you're battling lots of fine lines around the eye and mouth area. I wonder if any of your rejected ex-boyfriends or your 3 ex-husbands will show up for your funeral, Alexa. I seriously doubt it. What is the preacher going to do when he gives the eulogy? What will he say about you and your life? Ah, yes, she was selfish, self-centered, a bitch, a man-eater. But she had a killer body, a first-class tan. So that's got to count for something, hasn't it? Getting back to your fixation on sunbathing, Alexa, I've never seen anything like it before. I do wonder how much Coppertone you slather all over your slim, lanky, shapely body. I bet you keep the manufacturers in business. I've watched you on your sun lounger, lapping up the sun rather decadently, like a kitten might enjoy a saucer of milk. I've seen you posing shamelessly in your dark Gucci sunglasses, drinking a margarita and scanning a fashion magazine. As you idle away the long lonely hours listening to some trendy music with your earphones on. I will admit this. I've got to give this to you. Your tan is fantastic. You don't take any shortcuts, do you, on that score? What did you say to my sister, Jane? Ah, yes. I'd rather have a tan and get cancer than go around looking pale and sickly. My sister, Jane, is a nurse. She's seen arrogant, cocky people like you before, who believe you will live forever. You don't care about the risks you're subjecting yourself to. You will do anything for the sake of beauty, and there are no half measures with you. Yes, I've watched you sunbathing topless on your patio, when the weather's good, wearing the skimpiest of bikinis I've ever seen. I never knew they could make anything that small. I suspect it cost you a fortune to buy a bikini like that. But how can people shamelessly charge so much for something when there's barely any fabric on the item in question that they're trying to sell? It's a little like the emperor with no clothes on, who spent a vast fortune on going around naked, believing he was wearing the finest clothes that money could buy, when in reality he was wearing nothing at all. Yes, I watch you all the time, Alexa. I have the lens of my binoculars focused on your sun lounger in the late afternoons. I see everything. I'm very lucky because I'm in a position on my sister's balcony, where you would struggle to even observe me. Thank God my sister's at work all the time, so she can't see me spying on you. That sort of thing would absolutely disgust her. I've been in prison for a long time, and I'm not adverse to enjoying a bit of eye candy when I see it. Although this one is a little worse for wear, I have to say. Like a chocolate that's got thrashed around on the conveyor belt at the factory and ended up with some nasty bumps in the packaging. The trouble is, Alexia, your vanity and self-obsession knows no bounds. There is one thing I know about you, and that is you have no shame. You let it all hang out, don't you? You know you look good, don't you, Alexa? You want everybody to see you. There's a touch of outrageous voyeurism in you. I suspect you enjoy being looked at, being the centre of everyone's attention. I noticed the other day you never even covered up when a helicopter flew close over your building. You actually waved at the pilot half naked, hoping he was having a jolly good look at you. I always wonder how many men you've been through, Alexa. I think about this all the time. I know you've been through a lot. I have an instinct about these things, you see. Nothing would surprise me about you. How you must be dreading the autumn, when you're deprived of those days when you can soak up the delicious warm sunshine like a salamander. By the looks of things, there are not many warm summer days left for you to work on that tan of yours. Oh dear, it is rather a pity, isn't it? I've also got to make the most of the time left, as my pity is running out for you fast, and I need to strike while the iron's hot. I don't think during the winter months you'll be doing your handstands on the railing somehow, especially if they're covered with ice. Even you are not that dim. Yes, I will give you this. You have some good points, Alexa. I will acknowledge that you wrote me some really loving letters in prison. Too bad they were so insincere. Do you know what? When you've been hanging around cockroaches for long enough, like I have, I know when an extermination order is due, and in your case it has long since expired, Alexa. So in a nutshell, I'm coming after you. Watch out. Alexa was so relieved to get back to her apartment, while there was still some late afternoon sunshine left to enjoy. She had been fantasizing about this all day. She loved nothing better than lying back luxuriantly on her sun lounger, soaking up the last remnants of the sunny offerings that the day invited, and drinking a margarita, of course. Regretfully, the late sun was getting so much more timid as autumn beckoned. Alexa absolutely despised autumn and winter. They were her quintessential worst times of the year, when instead of taking trips to her sun lounger on her patio to thoroughly enjoy the frivolity of spending lackadaisical, leisurely, indulgent hours in the sun, topping up her golden tan, she was sadly forced to acquire the tanning bed services of the less than glamorous place in town. The tan did not come cheap, nor was it close to what she acquired on the balcony at her apartment. Besides, what fun was there, lying in a room, on a horrible bed, with a nasty light, and having to wear goggles on your eyes for protection? People were always asking Alexa about her perfect tan. "Have you been somewhere sunny and warm?" they would say, with a hint of envy etched in their voices, falsely assuming that she'd been on a tropical cruise somewhere, warm and beautiful, drinking back exotic cocktails under a setting sun. If only. Alas, Alexa's budget didn't stretch that far. Most of her available funds were secured for investing in her good looks. No one appreciated how expensive it was to continually look good, and Alexa's beauty routine certainly did not come cheap. One thing was for certain, she was never going to age gracefully. That was completely overrated as far as she was concerned. She would shamelessly do everything possible to hold back the hands of time. Too bad she hadn't seduced a plastic surgeon yet. Someone like that would be enormously useful to have on board at this stage of her life. Imagine the savings for all the nips and tuck treatments she would acquire. The tummy tucks, the liposuction, and of course the inevitable facelifts. The celebrities did it all the time, did they not, to look as young as they possibly could? And what was good for the goose was also good for the gander. "Heavens, no!" Alexa would chuckle. "I work on my tan enormously hard, you know, when I get home every afternoon after work. I'd never get a tan like this in one of those tanning beds in town. Absolutely not. Although I admit I employ their services in the winter as I don't have a choice. And as for those fake spray-on tans, well, they're just too dreadful for words, aren't they? Let's not kid, after a week or so they begin to fade. No, I like to do things the old-fashioned way, with lots and lots of copper tone and plenty of direct exposure to the sun. Imagine the amount of vitamin D my body is generating. I can't remember the last time I had a cold or flu. My immune system is absolutely fantastic." "I do get the vitamin D aspect of sunbathing," people would say to her. "That's beneficial, of course it is. But aren't you worried about sunbathing in direct sunshine? I mean, you look great, of course you do, Alexa. Your tan is enviable, so golden and healthy looking. You're absolutely glowing. But what about skin cancer? Surely you're worried about getting that. I mean, spending so many hours in the sun without wearing sun protective factor. Isn't that asking for heaps of trouble?" Alexa had frowned. She raised a brow, as if the very notion of skin cancer threatening her life at any point in time was bordering on the insane and ridiculous. In Alexa's mind, bad things always happened to other people, never to her. Cancer was a filthy, dirty word that she never wanted to acquaint with her life. She resented anyone daring to utter it to her. People did it all the time, didn't they? This gives you cancer, that gives you cancer, the next thing gives you cancer. It's like everything gives you cancer. It was absolutely sickening, and she didn't need to listen to this negative spin. If you lived like that with such a gloomy prognosis over your own life, well, you might as well bury yourself under a rock like a crab and wait for a predator to eat you up. I'm not worried about that, Alexa had snorted dismissively. That's never going to happen to me. Besides, cancer doesn't run in my family. I've got excellent genes in that regard. My grandmother lived to be over 100, she said proudly. That woman smoked every single day of her life and practically lived outdoors without wearing sun protective factor on an inch of her body. And she was absolutely fine. No problems at all. The very worst of Alexa's critics was that annoying woman who had moved into the flat next door to her. The woman had laid into her heart about her sunbathing rituals. What was her name again? Oh yes, Jane Goodlington. With a name like that, was it any surprise that that goody two-shoes of a woman, who looked as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, would have an opinion over absolutely everything? You know the type. Jane Goodlington was a nurse, working long, exhausting shifts at the Piedmont Atlanta Hospital, situated on 275 Collier Road. Alexa knew the hospital well. She'd been to the accident and emergency there once for treatment for a bee sting, and returned home with a hefty bill. One thing for sure was she was never going to go to the ER again in a hurry, if she could help it. The charges were excessive and ate out of her budget. Jane Goodlington was so irritating, the kind of woman that lightly henpecked everyone within an inch of their lives. As far as Alexa was concerned, it was none of the woman's business what she personally did with her spare time. If she wanted to sunbathe all day long, that was her decision, and her decision alone, not anybody else's business. She hated it when people poked their big fat noses into her affairs. It was rather unfortunate that Jane Goodlington's patio happened to overlook Alexa's, so Jane could see everything that Alexa got up to, which was a tad annoying, but it couldn't be helped. She felt sorry for the people at the hospital, having Jane Goodlington hanging around them, attending to their every need, delighting in giving them injections and all those ghastly, awful medications that people have to take, and practically breathing over them like Puffy the Magic Dragon. She first met Jane Goodlington when on one blissfully pleasant sunny afternoon, Alexa had been lying on her sun lounger with her large hat shading her face and her eyes shut behind designer dark glasses that she'd been wearing. All of a sudden she heard a little small voice that sounded like the voice you would expect to hear from the little people. Alexa half expected to look down on her sun lounger and see a small person the size of Tom Thumb looking up at her earnestly, but that is not what she saw. "Excuse me," came the tiny, faraway voice that Alexa wondered if she'd actually heard it. Alexa only ever had one earphone plugged into her ear. She liked to be aware of any other sounds she might hear, beyond the upbeat music she tended to listen to, like the sound of her daughter Sophia returning home to the apartment after school, or some of the extracurricular activities she enjoyed. Alexa wondered if she'd heard right, but then she heard the little voice again. And the tiny voice did not belong to a little person. It belonged to a big, voluptuous woman wearing a nurse's uniform, who was leaning over the patio and calling out to her. Alexa frowned. The woman was like a great big luminescent wasp flying over her sweet drink that she'd very much like to swat away if given the chance. What did this nauseating woman want with her? Why wouldn't she just go away and leave her alone? Alexa removed her sunglasses, and the blazing glare of the sunlight meant it was almost impossible to see the woman very clearly. But she did observe the woman's rather frumpy silhouette with a great measure of displeasure. Alexa looked up at the woman with a sulky pout on her face that she did not conceal, but Jane Goodlington didn't appear to notice, As a nurse, she probably met all kinds of people and was used to those that were a little on the temperamental side. I'm your next-door neighbour. I moved here a month ago. I'm single now. I was married about 2 years ago, but I'm now divorced, and I don't intend to get married again. The name's Jane Goodlington. I was looking forward to meeting you, but I wasn't expecting it to be like this. I'm very sorry to intrude on you. Nice to meet you, Jane, said Alexa rather tightly, gritting her teeth as she stared at her neighbour. My name is Alexa, she said suddenly, realising it would probably be impolite not to extend some neighbourhood pleasantries. It wouldn't do to get off on a bad start with her next-door neighbour. You heard bad stories, didn't you, on the internet all the time, about people having blazing rows with their next-door neighbours? And Alexa didn't want that to happen to her. She liked the peaceful life. The last thing she wanted was a neighbour leaving dead rats at her front doorstep, or stuffing leaves through her letterbox. She needed to humour this woman, even if it killed her to do so. Alexa sat up and placed a rather insincere, watery smile on her face, and gave Jane Goodlington her undivided attention for a moment. Yes, she said, raising a well-manicured brow. I hope you don't mind if I don't agree. I think some of my patients that have had malignant melanoma and have luckily survived, if they were to speak to you, they would tell you to get out of the sun. You're asking for trouble. They say the sun has changed exponentially over recent years, you know. It's not like it was in the 70s and 80s. I think the UV radiation is coming down to Earth fiercer than ever before. And it's not kind on our skins. People didn't get cancer in the 70s and 80s like they do now. It's a fact. The sun is different these days. That's why skin cancer rates are rampant in places like New Zealand and Australia. Holland as well, I believe. Let's just say it's a lethal condition. There are other ways you can get a tan, are there not? It's worth exploring those options if you ask me. Oh, you're talking about spray tans, are you? Said Alexa in disgust. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt, and no thank you very much. Don't dismiss those things out of hand, said Jane. You go into a cubicle wearing your bikini and the spray tans come on. You walk away with a fabulous tan without putting yourself at any risk, and you have it in seconds, literally. I've gone down that route myself when I went on holiday to Hawaii with some of my girlfriends. I didn't want to look anemic on the beach in my swimming costume. My tan was amazing, you know. I was thrilled with the results. For your information, I'm not putting myself at risk, Alexa insisted. I take very good care of my skin, and I don't believe I will ever get cancer. I get checked regularly by my dermatologist, and I have great genes. Well, I'm very glad to hear you are seeing a dermatologist. That's good news. I do sincerely hope you never get skin cancer. Maybe you really are one of the lucky ones, Alexa, and I'm not disputing that for a second. Look, I don't want to dictate to you what you do with your life by interfering and being a busybody. Far from it, in fact. I just wanted to warn you, that's all. The woman paused for a brief moment, looking moderately uncomfortable, and then said, There's something else I noticed, if you don't mind my commenting about it, that concerns me. More than your sunbathing, actually. Which is why I felt the urgent need to speak to you about this matter. Look at me, she chuckled. I sound like a headmistress of a school, don't I? But I am looking out for you, so please don't take offence. It's just well-meaning advice from me, and it's coming from a good place. It's just I would never forgive myself if anything untoward were to happen to you. Yes, said Alexa, raising a brow, sensing another lecture was coming her way. Why wouldn't this irritating woman leave her alone and just get lost? Well, I notice you have a rather outlandish habit of doing handstands on the balcony railings. When I saw you doing that, I hasten to say I was completely gobsmacked. Never seen anything like it before in my life. I kept thinking, does this woman have a death wish or something? I've never seen anyone attempt such a courageous but risky thing before. Very impressive, of course. Your handstands are flawless. But I just wish you wouldn't do them on the balcony railings. It's not safe. You could easily slip over the edge and fall off. It's very dangerous. A fall from this height would almost certainly kill you. It terrifies me to see you doing a thing like this. I actually hasten to say I held my breath when I saw you do that. It gave me the heebie-jeebies. I wondered if you were a stunt woman for a television show or something. I did wonder about that quite a lot. It's just regular folk don't do stuff like this. But I can see that there's nothing regular about you, Alexa, and I mean that as a compliment. Oh, don't worry about me, said Alexa, giving Jane a wink. I was a gymnast as a girl, you see. I like to keep myself nimble. I've been doing handstands on balcony railings all my life with no problems whatsoever. Even my parents never worried about my daring stunts. At first it scared them half to death, of course, and then they knew I wouldn't do anything if it wasn't actually safe to do. I admit it does seem risky to a casual observer who doesn't know me like yourself, but I can assure you I wouldn't do it if I wasn't completely confident of my ability to master the move. I assure you I do not have a death wish on me. I do admit it when I perform the stunt. It does give me a bit of a head rush, but I assure you I wouldn't do it if I thought for a single second it was dangerous. Or if I could potentially fall to my death. You see, when I do the handstands, if I flop over on the banister, I hang there and I pull myself over. So I'm not going to fall off it. Well, that's a relief, said Jane. Look, I know I'm sounding like a hen-pecking person, but I just don't want you to hurt yourself, that's all. It freaked me out to see you like that, in that compromising position, but you did look like an acrobat or a circus performer, I hasten to say. You're very lean and obviously incredibly strong. But you do realize that accidents can happen to any of us. I see it all the time at the hospital. There is another thing I needed to tell you about. This time Jane's face flushed bright red, as if she was personally embarrassed about something. It's just my brother. Now, he spends a lot of time at my apartment. Sometimes he behaves like a teenager, you see. He's in his late 40s, and would you believe it? Actually, he was the one that encouraged me to rent this place, and I'm so very glad I did. The apartment block here is absolutely stunning, is it not? Unfortunately for you, on my balcony, I can see everything you do on your patio. My brother, well, he won't be adverse to having a good old look at you if you're sunbathing topless. You're a very good-looking woman, Alexa, if you don't mind my saying so, but I'm very sure you know that. I know exactly what my brother's like. He's got a bit of a wandering eye, you see. A bit of a ladies' man. And I'm sure you don't want to be ogled by him. If I know him like I do well enough, I don't think he'd be adverse to clandestinely watching you in a state of undress, even at his age. I mean, he has posters over his walls of glamorous women in a state of undress, so no prizes for guessing what's on his mind 24/7. You know the type. Oh, don't worry about that, said Alexa, waving her hand dismissively. If your brother wants a cheap thrill from gawking at me, he's welcome. I don't care about that sort of thing. You know what they say, if you've got it, flaunt it. Well, I am rather relieved to hear you say that, said Jane, because knowing my brother, he's probably been looking at you without your knowing for quite a while now. I thought I needed to say something before you freak out when you realize there's a perv living next door. Anyway, I'll leave you to it. I hope you'll think about my advice. I'm sure I'll see you around. Maybe one evening, perhaps, you could pop around for a light snack or so. I'm rather a good cook, and it's good to get to know your neighbours, isn't it? I'm not here a lot because I'm on nursing shifts, but I will be in touch to invite you and your daughter around. Sounds absolutely lovely, said Alexa with a grumble, thinking that it sounded anything but. She could imagine dinner with Jane Goodlington would be like attending a no-nonsense lecture in a headmistress's office, and no doubt her quirky behaviours would come under intense scrutiny again, and she didn't need that. So there we are. That is the end of part 1. Part 2 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then.
Until next time, goodbye and good night.